After World War II, Europe was in ruins. Cities were destroyed, and economies were weak. The Netherlands, though small, was no different. The Dutch people, known for being hardworking and practical, started rebuilding their nation. But rebuilding a country takes a lot of workers. By the 1960s, the Dutch economy was thriving again, but there was a big problem: not enough workers. To fix this, the Netherlands invited people from countries like Turkey and Morocco to come and work. These workers were called guest workers. The idea was simple. They would come to the Netherlands, work for a few years, earn money, and then go back home. But life doesn't always go as planned. Instead of returning to their home countries, many of these workers decided to stay. They brought their families to the Netherlands, hoping for a better future. At first, the Dutch government wasn't sure about this. However, they eventually made it easier by creating family reunification laws. Ironically, a country known for being forward-thinking didn't fully realize the cultural challenges this would bring. In the 1970s and 1980s, Islamic immigration changed. It wasn't just about jobs anymore. Refugees from war-torn countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia started coming to the Netherlands. They were escaping violence and seeking safety. The Netherlands, famous for its tolerance and support for human rights, welcomed them. The government provided housing, welfare, and programs to help them adjust. However, adjusting wasn't easy. Dutch culture was very different from the cultures of the Muslim immigrants. Many found it hard to fit in, and some Dutch people struggled to accept the newcomers. Over time, cities like Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and The Hague saw their Muslim populations grow. By the early 2000s, Muslims made up about 6% of the population. While this might not seem like a big number, it brought noticeable changes. Entire neighborhoods became more diverse, with mosques being built and halal shops becoming common. Not everyone in the Netherlands was happy about these changes. Some people felt that Dutch traditions were disappearing. Others worried about the pressure on schools, healthcare, and other public services. Debates about women's rights, freedom of speech, and religion became more common. In 2004, a shocking event shook the country. Theo van Gogh, a filmmaker and critic of Islam, was murdered by a radicalized Muslim. This tragedy caused a wave of anti-Islam feelings and made many Dutch people question their country's approach. It didn't always work in practice. Many Muslim immigrants lived in separate communities, away from the rest of Dutch society. This lack of connection led to missed language barriers and varying levels of academic skills. In some schools, Dutch children became the minority, contributed to the economy, brought new ideas, and enriched the culture. For example, Ahmed Abu Taleb, the mayor of Rotterdam, is a Moroccan-born politician who has been praised for his leadership. There are also many Muslim entrepreneurs, artists, and athletes who have made a positive. Being Dutch about having certain traditions and values? Or is it about being open to change and diversity? The story of Islamic immigration in the Netherlands is not just about challenges. It's also about resilience, adaptation, and hope. While there have been struggles, there have also been successes. The Netherlands continues to evolve, and its people are, even if they strongly disagree. Known for being tolerant, honest, and open, the Netherlands has always tried to be a place where different cultures live together peacefully. But what happens when this peaceful coexistence starts feeling like a one-sided effort? In the Netherlands, religion is and can often be seen biking through the streets, working top jobs, or leading in politics. But in many Muslim communities, Dutch education encourages students to think critically and discuss openly. But some students from Muslim backgrounds have struggled with topics like evolution or LGBTQ+ rights. Teachers have even reported cases of their traditional foods like cheese, pork sausages, and bitterballen, deep-fried meatballs. But many Muslims follow halal dietary rules, which means they can't eat these foods. While this might seem like a small issue, it's one of the many ways cultural differences show up in daily life. In some neighborhoods, these cultural differences have become more noticeable. Certain areas have transformed into places where the main language isn't Dutch, and the atmosphere feels more Middle Eastern than European. For Dutch people who have lived there for generations, this can feel like losing their home. Some worry that their culture is being replaced. The Dutch tend to avoid direct confrontation, which can make things even harder. Instead of openly discussing problems, they might complain in private or make sarcastic jokes. This can create hidden tensions that grow over time and make people feel uncomfortable. These cultural clashes have also led to the rise of populist politicians. People like Pim Fortuyn, Geert Wilders, and Thierry Baudet have gained support by criticizing Islam and calling for stricter immigration rules. Wilders, for example, has even suggested banning the Quran, but not everyone agrees with this approach. Many Dutch citizens and groups are working hard to bring people together. They've created programs like language classes, community centers, and interfaith events to help build understanding and encourage integration. Despite these efforts, tensions remain. For many Dutch people, the issue isn't just about immigration, it's about their identity. What does it mean to be Dutch? Is it about specific traditions and values, or is it something that can change and adapt over time? This is a tough question with no clear answer, and it continues to cause debates across the country. A good example of this identity struggle is the debate over Zwarte Piet, a character in Dutch Christmas celebrations. Traditionally, Zwarte Piet has been portrayed with blackface, which many now see as racist. In recent years, the character has been changed to have soot marks instead of full blackface. While this debate isn't directly related to Islam, it shows how Dutch society is grappling with cultural change. It highlights the bigger question: how can a country hold on to its traditions while also being fair and inclusive in a diverse world? The Netherlands has always been proud of its tolerance and openness. But as the country becomes more diverse, it's facing new challenges, with cultural clashes getting tougher. The story of Dutch identity is still being written, and the next chapters will depend on how the country handles these differences in the years to come. Political and social consequences of multicultural policies. The Netherlands is a country known for finding balance, whether it's building land from water or handling social issues. For a long time, the Dutch prided themselves on being inclusive and tolerant. But when it comes to multiculturalism, things have not gone as planned. In the 1980s and 1990s, the Netherlands was seen as a great example of multicultural harmony. The government followed a system called polarizing, where different cultural and religious groups could keep their own traditions while still being part of Dutch society. Muslims, like other groups before them, were encouraged to create their own schools, media, and organizations to maintain their cultural identity. This idea sounded great on paper. In reality, it created separate communities that barely interacted. Instead of bringing people together, it made it easier for them to live apart, like strangers who share the same house but never talk. By the early 2000s, it was clear that this system wasn't working. Two shocking events shook the country. In 2002, politician Pim Fortuyn was assassinated, and in 2004, filmmaker Theo van Gogh was murdered. Both incidents were tied to debates about Islam, immigration, and free speech. Fortuyn was one of the first Dutch politicians to openly say that multiculturalism was failing. He believed it wasn't helping immigrants integrate and was threatening Dutch values. Ironically, he wasn't killed by someone from an immigrant background, but by an animal rights activist who disagreed with his views on Muslims. His death created a national crisis and brought more attention to these issues. Not long after, Geert Wilders, another controversial politician, became a leading voice against immigration and multiculturalism. Wilders, known for his striking blonde hair and extreme statements, gained support by calling for things like banning the Quran and closing mosques. His ideas divided the country. Some people loved him for speaking out, while others criticized him for spreading hate. Whether people agreed with him or not, his rise showed how much multiculturalism was worrying Dutch citizens. Other political parties also felt the pressure. They realized they couldn't ignore these issues, so even mainstream groups began taking tougher stances on immigration and integration. Traditional parties like the VVD, People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, and the PVDA, Labour Party, changed their approaches to win back voters. Even the D66 party, which was known for being progressive, had to figure out how to balance its ideals with the challenges of a multicultural society. While politicians debated, everyday life in the Netherlands was changing. Cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam, once known for being open and welcoming, became places where the problems of multiculturalism were easy to see. There were growing tensions between native Dutch people and immigrant communities. Issues like unemployment, crime, and housing shortages were worse in immigrant neighborhoods, which led to frustration on all sides. Housing policies made things even harder. Immigrants often ended up living in poor areas with bad housing and few opportunities. This created a cycle of poverty that was hard to break and added to the feeling of being left out of Dutch society. Freedom of speech also became a hot topic. The Dutch are proud of their tradition of free expression, but multiculturalism made this harder to manage. For example, publishing cartoons that criticized Islam or making films about sensitive topics sparked big debates. People argued about how to balance free speech with respecting other cultures and religions. Because of these challenges, the Dutch government decided to change its approach. Instead of focusing only on preserving cultural identities, they started encouraging immigrants to actively participate in Dutch life. New programs included language courses, job training, and citizenship classes. These changes aim to help immigrants feel more included and better able to succeed in Dutch society. While progress has been slow, some positive results are starting to show. Still, the Netherlands faces big questions. What does it mean to be Dutch in a multicultural world? Can the country stay tolerant and inclusive while dealing with the challenges of diversity? Or will fear and division take over? The journey is far from over. The Dutch are still trying to find a way to live together in harmony, balancing their values of openness and tolerance with the realities of a changing society. For centuries, the Dutch Constitution protects it, and many people see it as a symbol of their nation. Famous thinkers like Baruch Spinoza once challenged old ideas in the Netherlands, proving how much this freedom matters. But in today's multicultural society, this freedom often clashes with the feelings and beliefs of people from different cultures. The Netherlands has had to face tough questions about how far free speech should go and how to balance it with respect for others. This debate became more intense after the death of filmmaker Theo van Gogh, who was killed because of his views on Islam. Many people argued about whether free speech should have limits. Some said that freedom of expression must always be protected, even if it offends others. Others believed that respecting different cultures and religions was more important and that some things shouldn't be said or shown. The Dutch legal system has struggled with this issue. While the Constitution protects free speech, it also bans hate speech. But figuring out where the line is between free speech and hate isn't easy. Politicians like Geert Wilders have made this debate even more heated. Wilders is known for his strong opinions, like wanting to ban the Quran and close mosques. Many people were angry at his comments, but he also had a lot of supporters. Wilders claimed he was just using his right to free speech, while his critics said he was spreading hate and creating division. Courts have had a hard time deciding what is acceptable and what isn't, showing how tricky this issue is for Dutch society. One way the Netherlands is trying to handle this challenge is through education. Schools are teaching students about the importance of free speech and the responsibilities that come with it. These lessons encourage critical thinking and open discussions, especially in cities where people come from many different cultural and religious backgrounds. The goal is to help young people understand each other's perspectives and learn how to express their opinions respectfully. However, education alone can't solve everything. In classrooms with students from diverse backgrounds, conversations about free speech can be tense. Teachers often have to step in to mediate between students who strongly disagree on what is acceptable to say. Even though these discussions are difficult, they're important for creating a more inclusive society. Social media has made things even more complicated. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook give everyone a voice, but they also spread hate speech, false information, and extreme opinions. In the Netherlands, as in other countries, social media has become a place where cultural and political arguments play out. These platforms often make the debate about free speech even more intense. The Dutch government has tried to address these problems by creating laws to fight online hate speech and misinformation. But not everyone agrees with these measures. Some people worry that these laws could limit legitimate free speech and make people afraid to share their opinions. As the Netherlands continues to deal with these challenges, it's clear there are no simple solutions. Freedom of speech is a basic right, but it also comes with responsibilities. In a multicultural society where people have different beliefs and values, finding the right balance will always be hard. At its core, this debate is about more than just free speech. It's about the kind of country the Netherlands wants to be. Will it stay true to its values of freedom and openness, even when it's difficult? Or will it change those values to avoid conflict? The answer will depend on how the Dutch people choose to move forward together. In the Netherlands, a country known for its liberal values and openness, talking about Islamism is something many people avoid, especially in public. Even though the Netherlands is one of Europe's most progressive nations, the topic of Islamism, a political ideology tied to radical Islam, makes many people uncomfortable. The country has seen its Muslim population grow over the years, leading to debates about how Islam fits with Dutch culture. But when it comes to discussing Islamism, most people prefer to stay silent. Why is this the case? To understand why this topic is so sensitive, we need to look at the Netherlands' history of tolerance. The Dutch have always been proud of being an open society, where people from different religions and backgrounds could live together peacefully. This idea dates back to the Dutch Golden Age, when Amsterdam welcomed intellectuals, artists, and refugees from all over the world. The Netherlands still values inclusivity and freedom of expression. However, this commitment to tolerance has made many Dutch people hesitant to criticize certain groups or ideas. Some feel that questioning or challenging the beliefs of immigrant communities, especially Muslims, goes against the Dutch value of non-discrimination. This has created a culture where people avoid discussing sensitive topics like Islamism because they don't want to be seen as intolerant or Islamophobic. As a result, open conversations about the dangers of radical ideologies are often avoided. One reason for this hesitation is that many people don't separate Islam, the religion, from Islamism, the political ideology. Islam is a faith followed by millions of peaceful people around the world. Islamism, on the other hand, is an ideology that aims to enforce strict Islamic laws on society and politics. Because people confuse the two, criticizing Islamism can feel like attacking all Muslims. This misunderstanding makes it harder to have meaningful discussions about radicalization and its impact on Dutch society. Radicalization is a growing concern in the Netherlands. Over the years, there have been several incidents that brought attention to the problem. One of the most shocking events was the 2004 murder of filmmaker Theo van Gogh, who was killed by a radicalized Dutch-Moroccan man. This event shook the nation and highlighted the dangers of Islamist ideology. Other incidents, like the 2015 train attack in Amsterdam and the 2016 Brussels bombings, also involved people connected to radical groups in the Netherlands. Despite these events, most people still avoid talking openly about Islamism. Part of the reason for this silence is the culture of political correctness in the Netherlands. The country has long embraced multiculturalism, which encourages respect for all cultures and religions. Criticizing Islamism is often seen as criticizing Muslim communities as a whole, which many people believe is wrong. The fear of being labeled racist or Islamophobic stops many people from speaking up, even when they have valid concerns. In recent years, terms like Islamophobia have been used to shut down conversations about Islamism. People worry that expressing their opinions might lead to accusations of intolerance or hate. This fear is especially strong in politics, where the issue of Islamism is highly sensitive. Politicians like Geert Wilders, who leads the Party for Freedom (PVV), have openly criticized Islamism and called for stricter measures against radicalization. While some people support his views, others accuse him of spreading hate and dividing society. This makes it hard for politicians to address the issue without being criticized. The reluctance to discuss Islamism has serious consequences. By avoiding these conversations, the Netherlands risks allowing radicalization to grow unchecked. Extremist ideas often spread in environments where they aren't openly challenged. If people continue to stay silent, it will become even harder to address the root causes of radicalization. This silence has also given rise to populist and far-right political parties like the PVV and the Forum for Democracy, FVD. These parties use public fears about immigration and radicalization to gain support. While their messages are often extreme, they reflect real frustrations among people who feel their concerns are being ignored. Ignoring the issue of Islamism has created a gap in the conversation, and these parties have filled that gap. So, how can the Netherlands start talking about Islamism in a constructive way? The first step is understanding that Islamism is a political ideology, not a religion. People need to learn the difference between Islam, which is practiced peacefully by millions, and Islamism, which promotes radical ideas. By making this distinction clear, it will be easier to discuss the problem without offending or alienating Muslim communities. At the same time, it's important to ensure that criticism of Islamism doesn't lead to discrimination or hostility toward Muslims. The goal should be to create a society where everyone, regardless of their faith, can live together peacefully. This means addressing the dangers of radicalization while also promoting understanding and respect among different groups. Breaking the silence on Islamism won't be easy, but it's necessary. The Netherlands can't afford to ignore this issue any longer. Open and honest conversations about radicalization and its causes are crucial for protecting the country's future. By facing these challenges head-on, the Dutch can uphold their values of freedom, tolerance, and inclusivity while ensuring a safe and harmonious society for everyone.